kickstart this one off. So if I all of a sudden just start waffling or talking off kilt in this podcast, it's literally because I haven't slept really yet. So not good. And by the way, that's a message for another day. If you haven't listened to any of the podcasts that we've done about sleep, you don't get your sleep right, it's pretty freaking difficult to get your health right? All right, are we ready to go? Everyone feeling good? If you got any questions over the course of the podcast, pop them into the comments. We can happily answer them. And yeah, it was a painful game. All right, we're ready to rock and roll, team. Let's do this. On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This right here is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. And so in this episode, we're going to be talking about hunger, because I'm a big advocate of talking about calorie deficits and how to achieve fat loss the real way. But the real secret is, how the hell do you get your hunger under control? You might be sitting here eating your breakfast, lunch, or dinner thinking, bloody hell, that's my problem. I understand calories, but I just don't know how to stop eating. So quick recap. In our client group, and hey to our clients, love you guys, appreciate you. Last week, we ran a deep dive around calorie tracking. And if you missed it, you need to go and rewatch the workshop, because it will be very, very freaking helpful. Yes, things like age, genetics, gender, those things, hormones, they definitely play a role in weight gain. Our excuses play a role, but they are not the main event. Most of the time, these things only matter, as an example, our genetics, what's happening there, our metabolism, what's happening there. The reason that those things actually matter for fat loss is that how many calories you end up eating versus how many calories you end up burning, that's what it impacts. So if you're thinking things like, oh, my metabolism's broken or my genes are against me, I'll be honest, those things matter a little bit, but not nearly as much as you think. The real game is calorie balance. And what I want to talk today about is the real thing tipping that balance for most people is hunger. The elephant in the room is hunger and food noise. And this is where most people on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, most personal trainers have this dead wrong, because they don't fully understand food. They've come from a training background, which is fine. They know their technical training, which is good, but they don't fully understand food. They bang on about discipline and tracking and eating clean, but completely ignore the elephants in the room. And what are those elephants as far as weight loss? Hunger and food noise. That's something that's not talked about enough. Look, your brain's priority is first and foremost to keep you alive. And that's the reason why hunger will always be the thing that wins. Hunger will always win. It'll always win. When you're starving yourself, it becomes a war of attrition, right? You're like David and Goliath. You're David. You're never going to win that battle against hunger, ever. And I know this because right now I'm doing a cut, and I've taken my own calories from 3,000 roughly a day down to 2,000. All of a sudden, I've started dreaming of food. I never fucking dream of food. I'm randomly wandering the kitchen. Yesterday, I had a moment where I just found myself with a turkey sausage in my mouth. I can't even remember pulling it out of the fridge. When you are hungry, your brain plays these crazy mind games. As an example, I was saying at the start of the podcast, got up and watched the Origin last night, the State of Origin football, which was at 2:30 a.m. in the morning, my time. And because I was tired, I was having this like crazy conversation with myself that went for like 5 minutes, trying to negotiate with myself as to whether I should eat the 200 calorie protein bar or 50 calories worth of raspberries. Once I decided on the raspberries, I was then having a fight with myself over whether I add the calories to yesterday's tracking or tomorrow's tracking, given that it was after midnight. This is like the craziness that hunger induces. So let me be real. If you're constantly thinking about food all the time and you feel like you can't focus at work or you get snappy at your kids because you're starving, that's not a weakness. That's not a lack of willpower. That's your body's innate drive that's trying to get you to eat, and you're trying to fight against that. Does this make sense, team? And so you can white knuckle it through a diet for a bit, maybe a week. Maybe you could make a month of white knuckling through a diet. And how many times have you done this before? You've done this a million times before. This was your sole weight loss strategy until you come into Better Body Academy. But hunger always wins every single time. And the only success that you're going to have against hunger is working out ways to either blunt the hunger or to achieve satiety. I am starting to lose fat right now. I've lost a couple of kilos over the last couple of weeks of almost pure body fat. It's not because I've defeated hunger. I haven't. I've been able to achieve some satiety through my food choices. And something that I've come to understand, especially after interviewing Janelle in the last podcast, one of my friends who was 750 pounds, is that some people have constant food noise. Is that you? This is why Ozempic has become so popular, because it's the only way that some people can get past the constant food noise. And guess what? The research shows that the more overweight a person is, the more food noise that they actually have. What the hell is food noise? It's the constant mental chatter about food. Whether you consciously realize it or not, it's that constant mental, it's just there gnawing at your brain the whole day. You're thinking about what you're going to eat next, when your next snack is. You're eyeing up the leftovers on your kid's plate. And the wild part about this, you want to know what the wild part about it? Half the time you're not even actually hungry. It's psychological hunger. Sometimes it's emotional, boredom, stress, or just you're doing out of habit. Sometimes it's almost like a food addiction where we get a dopamine hit from eating those like hyper processed, high sugar, high fat foods. So if you find yourself thinking all day about food, so much so that your stomach's talking, it's not just your stomach talking, it's your brain talking to you as well. That's why understanding hunger and getting an understanding and awareness of hunger is such a game changer. Satiety, blunting that hunger, is the missing piece. Here's the wake-up call. If you want to lose weight and actually keep it off, you can't just think about calories. Calorie balance is what you need to understand, but you also have to think about satiety. What foods genuinely are going to help me feel full and satisfied? So you're not spending your entire day fighting against your own brain and body. If you are listening to this live, let me know if this makes sense for you. Like, think about it. The only way you're going to win is if you are able to not just get calorie balance in your favor, but you actually can win the David and Goliath battle against hunger. Satiety is what helps you eat less calories without feeling like you're on some punishment diet. And it's two things. Number one, understanding which foods stave off hunger. Which foods keep you full and stop you from raiding the pantry every 10 minutes? Which foods do that? That's the first question. Number two, which foods don't spark appetite or cravings? Meaning you can have some and then all of a sudden not want to eat the entire packet. Does that make sense? So we want to look at what foods are satiety uh, superfoods. Which foods are superstars in terms of making you feel full, and which foods do you kind of need to steer away from because they trigger hunger? If you nail these two things, you can be in a calorie deficit while feeling like you're not always about to snap. So let's go to the satiety superstars first. Let's break down the foods and the habits that are your secret weapons against hunger and food noise. Number one is high protein foods. Protein is king when it comes to feeling full. You could eat 500 calories of biscuits and be hungry in an hour, and 500 calories of chicken breast or Greek yogurt, and you will be full for a long time. So, although it comes down to calorie balance, what is the impact that the foods that you are eating actually has? Protein takes longer to digest and sends the signal to your brain of, I'm full. So if you're not eating enough protein, or if you're wondering why all these fitness people on Instagram and Facebook are telling you to eat more protein, the primary reason from a weight loss perspective is that it fills you up because it's harder to break down. So if you're under eating protein, you're making things infinitely harder for yourself. So let's talk about some real life swaps that you could do. Like, how could you utilize that knowledge? You could maybe stop eating peanut butter toast for breakfast and instead have protein oats with berries, or have low fat Greek yogurt and a banana. Or maybe if you just want something quick, have a protein smoothie. This will fill you up. It means that at lunch and dinner, you can't just have a salad and think that you're going to win that game. You won't. There has to be a source of protein in that salad, like chicken or fish or beans or bloody tofu, whatever fits. Protein is going to satiate you. The next one, number 2, is high fiber foods. Think of fiber kind of like a sponge. It bulks out your meals, it takes up room in your gut, and it slows down how fast the food leaves your stomach. Now, the best sources of fiber are vegetables, fruits, like beans and lentils, and whole grain foods, unprocessed carbohydrates. Now, how do you know if you've got a pretty high fiber diet? Obviously, you can check it, right? You can check it with MyFitnessPal. But if you've got lots of colors on your plate, it's likely that you've got a decently high fiber diet because you've got lots of fruit and vegetables, and that means that you're getting in enough fiber. So what can you do practically? You can add a ton of fibrous veggies to every meal. When I post my meals inside of our academy in our Facebook group, I'm posting them to show you how much food I am eating. But if you inspect the plate, you're going to notice 2 things. Every single meal is a chunk of protein cooked in a good way and a huge amount of fiber. So I'm full. What can you do? You can chuck some berries on your breakfast. Maybe you could go for some wholemeal wraps or whatever at lunch. Let's talk about idea 3. So we've talked about high protein, high fiber. We're nailing the things that satiate us. This is one that's often missed. This is low calorie density foods or high water foods. So this is eating big for less. This means eating lots of foods with water and air, so you get a big plate, but it doesn't blow out your calorie count. So your body likes weight in your stomach. The heavier the meal, without that heaviness being fat and sugar, the fuller you're going to be. So what do you think is going to make a food heavy? It's going to be water, right? So think about massive salads with lean meat, high water content. Think about soups, high water content. Think about fruits and vegetables like watermelons and oranges and strawberries, cucumbers, tomatoes, high water content. steamed or boiled potatoes. I'm going to come to those in a second. And my favorite, listen to this, guys. I'm on a cut, right? I'm drinking Diet Coke and I'm drinking 2 or 3 zero alcohol, low calorie beers every night as I'm winding down and relaxing. I'm going to say it again, 0 alcohol. And the beers that I've got are 10 calorie beers per can. So I'm having, what is it? Let's say, how big's this can? 375 mil, 355 mil. I'm having basically 3 cans of beer, which is 1.2 liters, 1.3 liters of fluid for a total of 30 calories. There's no alcohol in them. So actually, this is a smart way to fill your stomach up. Does this make sense, guys? Protein, fiber, high water content. You know, I love a bit of science. And a decade or so ago at Sydney University, they did a research on a very simple idea where they took common food and they fed them to real people and they measured how full those people were after it. Out of the 30 odd foods that they measured, do you want to know what foods ranked highest on the satiation scale? Boiled potatoes. Boiled potatoes ranked highest by an absolute long shot. Why did boiled potatoes rank highest? People who ate them were less likely to overeat later on because they are high in fiber. They have a high density of, or a low density of calories, so much water in them. You have to chew them. So chewing is a slow process, and they're not hyperpalatable. There's not much flavor to them. So you kind of eat them and it doesn't spark this addiction that something like pizzas or a Dorito would. You're getting the picture here, guys? The research shows that if you try to chase fullness with foods that are high protein, high fiber, high water, the chances of you overeating at the next meal are going to be less, so your overall calories come down. The final point that I want to raise around hunger is not satiation, but avoiding triggering your hunger. We call these hedonic foods. Hedonic foods are foods that hijack your appetite. So let's get honest. There are some foods that you simply can't eat in moderation. How many times do we say everything in moderation? The problem, that's true. But the problem is not some of these foods, you just can't eat them in moderation. When you open a family-sized pack of crisps or a tub of ice cream and it's suddenly gone, that's a hedonic food. And they are designed to make you eat them en masse. These are foods that are high in sugar, fat, and salt. So we're talking biscuits, crisps, chocolate, pizza, takeaways, most kind of packaged snacks. So the problem with these foods is that you have a little bit, they trigger a dopamine release in you, and then you want more and more and more and more, and it becomes insatiable. And all of a sudden, you've eaten the entire pack. So you want to avoid those foods if you know that that's you. As a final part, how to handle these foods. If I was a crack addict and I wanted to stop taking crack, I wouldn't keep a baggie in my pocket. It's very apparent to me, guys, that if you have constant food noise, you're always thinking about food and you're always hungry, but your kitchen is full of foods that are just so tempting to eat and you might work from home, or when you feel that emotion come up at nighttime because you're pissed off, stressed, tired, bored, all of the things, and you have all of your drugs available to you to just walk and eat, but you're saying you want to lose weight, you are making it infinitely more difficult for yourself. Infinitely more difficult for yourself. This is the one change that you can make, is to bloody detox your fridge and cupboards. So bringing this to a close, let's talk about real life application. What can you do as a result of this podcast to increase your fiber, your protein, your water, and decrease the chances of you eating these hedonic foods? We'll start with the hedonic foods. You need to do a detox of your cupboards. Stop fucking saying, oh, but I've got kids. So many people say, I've got kids. They blame their kids for having a cupboard full of shit. Well, they're kids. They want to eat that stuff. Yeah, but if you get rid of it, then they're not going to want to eat it. It's not there. There's going to be a detox period for the whole family. If you clean the stuff out, it's not available to them. And as a side benefit, it's not available to you either. And you can stop blaming your weight on the fact that you're keeping these foods for your kids. Now, in terms of getting the filling, the satiating foods in, here's what a busy mum or dad juggling food, kids, life, and a million different things. Here's what your food could look like over the course of a day. Breakfast, you might have a low-fat Greek yogurt with some berries. Or you might have some oats with some whey protein in it and some berries on top. Or you might have a protein shake, not a fruit smoothie, a protein shake. Lunch could be a massive bowl of chicken and salad or fish and salad with a whole bunch of cherry tomatoes and a light vinaigrette, light dressing. Dinner could be maybe a lean pork or beef bolognese with a massive plate of zucchini noodles or high protein noodles or a side of potatoes. And then for snacks, you could be having things like beef jerky, fruit, a bowl of strawberries or a banana. Do you notice what is showing up in all of those examples there? They are whole foods that are unprocessed. If you narrow this podcast down to just asking yourself, how much of my day am I just eating processed stuff? And if that's what you're doing, that's the problem. When you start to eat more unprocessed stuff, more single ingredient whole foods, firstly, you've got to chew them. Chewing takes a lot of work. It's like exercise. Number two, your gut has to process them, right? That's a slow process to do. If they're a big fat ass piece of chicken or steak, that's hard to break down, right? So you want to satiate yourself when you're trying to lose weight rather than white knuckling it and feeling hungry all the time. As we bring the podcast to a close, the truth is you do not need to starve yourself, but you do need to think about, how do I blunt hunger and try to cool down the food noise just a little bit? And if you fill yourself up on high satiating foods, it won't cure everything. You're still going to have a little bit of hunger, but you're at least giving yourself a chance in this David and Goliath battle, where most often hunger ends up winning. This has been the Better Body Academy podcast, coming to you with another episode. I do hope that it added some value this morning, this afternoon, or this evening. We have over 100 episodes of the podcast that you can, 400 episodes of the podcast that you can listen to on any of the podcast players just by searching Better Body Academy podcast. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace. Okay, so answer any questions. So Gas said, what about eggs for breakfast? Yeah, so it's a good question. So eggs. Every egg is 6 grams of protein and around 70 calories. Okay, so let's say that you were to have 4 eggs or 3 eggs. Let's say 3 eggs. That'd be 18 grams of protein. So that's an okay serving of protein. And that would be 18 grams of protein for 210 calories. That's about the same as a protein bar. So that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Yeah. But I would probably put something else in there. Like, what are you going to have? You're going to have maybe 3 eggs and I'll tell you what I personally do, Gas. I personally have a huge egg white scramble. So just like I'm only teaching you guys what I do, maybe I take it a little bit further. Me personally, I have every single morning, I have 100 grams of protein before 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's very simple for me. I have 2 scoops of protein powder on water, 50 grams of protein. I then have half a liter of egg whites turned into a scramble, another 50 grams of protein. Now, people might say, well, that's boring. You know what's not boring? Being at 100 grams of protein at 7 o'clock in the morning, being extremely fucking full, having a body that I'm proud of at 43 years old, and then being able to somewhat eat what I want for the rest of the day because I've got so many calories left because I've got my protein in early. Does that make sense? I want to get my protein in early to curb my appetite, especially right now while I'm in a cut. I want to curb my appetite right now. Then I can be a bit more flexible when it comes to lunch and dinner, maybe even slip in a dessert afterwards. Does that make sense? Hey, Jamie, how are you, legend? Love that I have your company in here. Same thing for you, Benny and Craig. If you're on Instagram, we're live in our client group. If you guys want to ask any questions about that, good morning, Bretto. Good morning, Tim. Ask any questions about the egg whites are great. They really are, Jace. And people, like, fair enough, I would understand, people say, oh, they're a bit expensive. What I personally do is buy them in the liquid egg whites. In Australia, I haven't seen them as liquid egg whites. I've seen them as like in the milk aisle. I've seen them in the frozen section. So it's like a liter of egg whites. I know that they definitely have them in Coles in the frozen section. So, like, you got to think about, let's say it costs you, I don't know, like what, $10 a liter or something like that. That's like, you can have half a liter of eggs for $5 and you're going to get 50 grams of protein. That's actually really good. You'll get 50 grams of protein from a steak, right? From a 250 gram. Listen to this. Hey, Ronnie, listen to this. Listen to the comparison. For you to get 50 grams of protein from a steak, 250 grams, that steak's going to cost you what? $12, $10, $12. If you can get a liter of egg whites for, say, $10, well, half a liter of egg whites, which is 50 grams of protein, is costing you $5. It's actually very, very cost efficient. And the best bit is you don't have to sit there throwing the yolks out of your eggs. Tim says, if you do 100 before 7 a.m., are you still pulling up at 200 for the day, or do you go to, say, 250? Good question, Tim. What's really interesting is because I've been tracking now, I've got a really good grasp of where this is. So for me, I'm averaging about 250 to 260 grams of protein per day. And I'm fine tuning this a little bit because I don't necessarily think it's that beneficial to be going up to kind of like 300. It's not detrimental, but it's not really beneficial. So what I'm starting to realize is that my fat, if I don't have some piece of fish in my day, I eat a really low fat diet, which is good from the perspective of total calories because it helps you control total calories. But really the only way you're going to get in your omega-3 fats is pretty much from fish, right? So this is where I think subbing in a lunch, something like sardines or tuna, which are high protein, but also high in the very good type of fat, that's a really good idea. Sardines in brine, not tomato sauce or not oil, are really, really good if you like fish. If you don't like the fishy taste, like, totally get it. Totally get it. So yeah, Tim, I do think it's good practice to pull up at about like no more than 250 a day, because what you're then sacrificing is you're sacrificing carbs or fat. You don't want to sacrifice the fat from the hormone perspective. That's where your hormones are built. From a carb perspective, you want to have some energy, right? Available energy. The goal, I don't think it's, you want to choose the type of carbs you're eating, and the best types of carbs are predominantly going to come from, in my opinion, fruit and vegetables. If you have a choice between fruit and vegetables or kind of breads and pastas, I'm always going to gravitate towards the whole food source, because they're going to be lower in total calories as well. And they're going to fill you up, right? Brett says, how does shellfish prawns go as a fish substitute? Not amazing in terms of the omega-3s, but shellfish and prawns are amazing in terms of a protein to calorie ratio. Actually, I was looking at this earlier on, Brett. Shrimp is about prawns and shrimp. That's about as high as you can possibly get. That's up there with like egg whites as the highest protein to calorie ratio. So they don't have those omega-3 fats as high as fish, but in terms of the protein to calorie ratio, amazing. One of the things that you know that if you are in Better Body Academy, our supplement protocol really only has 3 things in it. One, protein bombs, Ron saying. 1, creatine monohydrate. Every single person should be taking it, unless you have existing kidney disease. You should be taking it, and so should you guys. Whey protein isolate, Amy, is what you want. It is the highest protein to calorie ratio, whey protein isolate. And the third one is a multivitamin. What probably needs to be added to that protocol, I just want to be very, very clear in the science before I recommend it to you guys, is an omega-3 fish oil of sorts that helps you, particularly if you're not a fish lover, that helps you nudge up your omega-3s, because really that's where you need to get them, right? And so if you can have them as a pill form, that is condensed form of fat, omega-3 fat, then that's probably a good idea. I just want to get a little bit more certainty in the research before I start recommending that to you. Team, do you want to ask any questions? There's still plenty of people watching on live across our client groups. If you want to ask any questions, I'm here for you. Bonnie says, I think the hardest thing is feeling sluggish, like you were talking about yesterday in a coach call. I agree, Bonnie. Totally agree. It is hard to feel sluggish. It's bloody hard because you're in a calorie deficit. So this is why I wanted to do an episode on hunger, because it's all right to talk about the calorie deficit, but if we don't talk about how you manage that, then it becomes like a losing game, right? So the question would be for you, Bonnie, have you cut too low in the calories? That's a possibility, right? So maybe you need to bring the calories up a little bit. It just depends on how far you've cut down, right? Depends on how far you've cut down. In terms of sluggishness, generally sluggishness comes when, well, a few reasons. You're new in our academy, bonds. So if you're going from 3,000 calories a day to 1,500 and you're being tight on that, 1,600 being tight on that, yes, you'll be losing fat, but you'll be also feeling fairly tired, and that's fairly normal. So something to note. Awesome podcast, says Helen. Thanks so much. Shaz says, hey, Sharon, lovely to have you in here as well. Hey, Michelle, beautiful. What's going on? Hey, Nenzi. Bonnie says, if you're eating fish, should you take fish oil? Well, this is the point, Bonds. I want to get really clear on the levels that we should be kind of getting our omega-3s to. And my understanding, just as an off-the-cuff answer, is if you're eating fish, oily fish we're talking, that is salmon, tuna, sardines, mackerel, surface fish, in other words. If you understand fishing, if you don't understand fishing, that won't make sense. But if you're eating oily fish, a couple of times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, then your omega-3 content, which is all about brain health and arthritis, osteoporosis, is going to be pretty good. It's going to be your intake's going to be pretty good. But if you don't eat fish very often, then maybe supplementation can come in. But I will kind of flesh this out a little bit to get to the science of it. Okay. Any other questions? So yeah, Dean says, I get the food noise at night in front of the TV. Absolutely, Dino. Yeah, and everyone does. The reason that you get the food noise at night in front of the TV is because I want you to think about the whole thing, the whole situation, right? Do you get the feeling that it's a little bit of a reward to sit down at the end of the day? That's not bad. But the trigger, if go and read Atomic Habits, Dean. In Atomic Habits, he talks about for every habit that you want to change, you're doing that habit because there's a trigger that happens. So for example, 8 o'clock hits and you go, all right, it's time to do that habit. There's a craving that you get, which is I want to feel relaxed, right? I want to feel that feeling of relaxation, like the day is finally over. And then there's a habit that you do, which is sit down and eat something, right? Be it the packet of Tim Tams or a packet of strawberries, it doesn't matter. And the reward is that you feel relaxed. So your brain realizes that at 8 o'clock every night, the way that I reward myself and get the feeling of relaxation is to sit down on the couch and eat the thing. So this might sound a bit wild, Dean, but one of the ways that you can break this habit is to break it at the trigger, right? Break it at the trigger. Go and don't sit in the same seat. Don't turn the TV on. Go to a different part of your house and read a book. Break that consistent emotional. Does that make sense? Have a think about that, brother. How can you break that? What protein shake would you recommend? Yeah, I mentioned that above, Ames. Whey protein isolate powder. Whey protein isolate powder. Beck says, I take Caruso magnesium only at the moment. Yeah, so magnesium is one of those ones where it's got lots and lots of hype. My understanding about magnesium is that it's only beneficial if you're short. Well, it is. Any mineral is only going to be beneficial if you're short on that mineral. And there's a lot of stuff on kind of internet and podcasts which say, have you had your levels of vitamins and minerals of different kind tested? To my knowledge, it's just not that reliable you can't go and get your magnesium tested because most of the magnesium is inside of your bones. So you can't actually get it tested, right? So with this in mind, if you test a supplement, you try it, it might be a placebo effect. It might be that it actually works. You can test it, but just understand that nothing is going to make you feel better. Nothing is going to make you feel better than doing the trifecta, getting your nutrition in check, eating more single ingredient whole foods, hydrating yourself enough, getting enough sleep, walking enough steps, going to the gym, and then trying not to stress too much. The kind of big 6 that we track in our daily check-ins. Feel free to ask any other questions, guys, and I'm happy to answer them. So Jamie says, is beef isolate protein good as I struggle with whey with IBS? Yeah. Well, what I like about that, Jamie, is that beef isolate, you're rather than defaulting to what a lot of people do and whey is one of those things that not everyone tolerates. I would absolutely recommend that you stick with an animal-based protein, unless you're a vegetarian, of course, which you wouldn't be in Better Body Academy if you were, because we don't take vegetarians. So yeah, beef isolate protein is probably the next best option after whey. It's usually a little bit more expensive, but that's probably what I would recommend. And I would definitely recommend that over things like a collagen protein or a vegetarian protein for sure, brother. Okay, good question. Guys and girls, any other questions? So Beck says, what's a good multivitamin to try? I wouldn't get too kind of crazy about this one, Bex. I think that what you probably just want to do is go there and just go to the multivitamin store, the the bloody supplement store, or go online for bulknutrients.com.au is the one we recommend to Australians. And you're just looking for, I would probably suggest a women's multi, only because women's versus men's multis will typically be just a little bit higher in the things that women tend to need more of. So as an example, women who are like a women's, like a 40-year-old women's multi will typically be higher in iron, for example, because it's targeted towards women who are menstruating, right? And then that's why you have over 50s multis, right? It's because the needs will change. So for example, it might be that iron intake can come down a little bit, but folate intake, for example, goes up. So you have multis for pregnancy, right? Folate needs to go up. So that's the reason why you would try it. But I would just, in your case, I would just take a broad-based women's multi, and I wouldn't think too much about it as long as it's a decent quality brand. Okay, that's what I would do. And I would just follow the packet. The reality is, if you're eating a lot of fruit and vegetables and meats, it'll probably just pee it all out anyway. But if you have the financial means to afford a multivitamin, you're just doing it as an insurance policy, Bex. And then your next position will be creatine. If you're not already, should be definitely doing that. Michelle says, does energy mostly come from carbs, or do we also get it from protein? It's a very good question, Michelle. Energy comes from all four micronutrients. So whenever we say the word energy, that is synonymous with calories. Calories are energy. Energy is calories. Okay, so calories measure energy. Calories measure energy. Okay, so to your question, calories are coming from our foods. So does energy come from our foods? Yes. So what you're actually asking when you say, does energy come from our foods? You're actually asking, does calories come from our foods? And does calories come from carbs, or does it come from all foods? Yes. Calories comes from 4 sources: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and alcohol, as in ethanol. So, when you look at the vodka bottle and it says 40%, the fraction of that, which is alcohol, it comes with calories, right? So as an example, in a beer, right, the calories come in 2 places. They come from the 4 or 5% alcohol of the beer, and they also come from the carbs in the beer. This is the reason why I can drink. In the podcast, I talked about drinking a 10-calorie beer. I can have a 10-calorie beer because the beer contains no protein, no fat, no alcohol, and it contains a very small amount of carb, very small amount of barley and hops. Okay, so why does a Diet Coke, this is a Povo version, why does a Diet Coke contain no calories? Like, how is that possible? It's because it contains, if I look at this thing here, it doesn't contain any fat, it doesn't contain any carbohydrate, and it doesn't contain any protein. So what does it contain? It contains carbonated water and then some flavorings, essentially, that are not, they're so tiny, they're so freaking tiny that you need the tiniest little drop, and there's nothing in them. As from a calorie perspective, I just wonder if I'm cutting out too many carbs. What problem are we trying to solve? You let me know what problem we're trying to solve here. I'm cutting out too many carbs. So what? Like what's the issue? You've lost 17, 18 kilos, Michelle? Where are the problem? This is a really interesting thing. Now, I might not know something here, and you might have had a chat with one of the other coaches inside of the academy. I might not know something, but this is really interesting what we do as humans. Something's working, and it's almost working too well. So we start to question it. Michelle, you're one of our stars. You've lost, at last count, 17 kilograms. So don't create a problem out of nothing. Like, what you're doing is working. And so if what you're doing is working, don't change what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. And eventually it will stop working because you've lost so much body fat and you will go into a plateau. And at that point in time, that's when we may need to either lack of energy. So people use the word energy to mean different things. What you probably mean is you feel lethargic, right? Which would make total sense. But do you have a lack of energy? Factually, you do have a lack of energy because you're losing weight. The lack of energy is what's causing the weight loss. That might be a penny drop moment for you to hear it like that. You're saying it from a statement of how you feel, right? A lack of energy. So I'm fatigued. Yeah, that's what you mean. But your lack of energy is partially being caused by your lack of energy, aka your lack of calories, because you're in a calorie deficit, which is what's causing your weight loss of 18.9 kilos now. So you will have a lack of energy. Yes. The question that you might be moving towards is, am I cutting my calories too far? And what that's causing is what we talked about in this podcast. It's causing hunger, like ravenous hunger. You are going to have some hunger. And if your lack of energy feels almost like it's the David and Goliath battle of appetite and lack of energy, and you feel like you're going to cave in, well, then we might need to bring your calories up a little bit. Or it might be that you're eating, if you look at your sort of split of your macros, Michelle, if you're eating, let's say that you're at 1,700, let's just pick a number and say you're at 1,700 calories or 1,600 calories. If you as a woman are eating 220 of those calories as protein, that means you're getting 220, you're getting roughly 1,000 of your 1,600 calories from protein. You just don't need that much protein, because what's actually happening, like the question that Tim asks before, if you have too much protein, it's not that the protein is a problem, it's that you're not having fat and carbohydrates, so you're going to feel full. I hardly ever feel hungry. Well, that's partially because your protein intake is high, right? 1,600 protein intake is high. Yeah, probably needs a bit of a conversation. Let's maybe just ask about it on tonight's coaching call if you need clarification. Okay, so what else have we got here? Thank you. No problems, Jay. Chris says, I went into the Chemist Warehouse and I looked at multi. There's one brand that does one for millennials. Yeah, fuck, man. Gen Z boomers, pricks. Yeah. Can't comment on that one, mate. I haven't seen the Gen Z multi. I mean, there might be a case for, certain, I haven't prepared an answer offhand, but maybe thinking about what a younger person might need, that potentially you might be able to make an argument for some micronutrients being, some vitamins and minerals being required. Maybe, for example, zinc or magnesium for a young guy might be, anyway, that's beyond that. Tim, eating before bedtime, as you have taught us, doesn't matter. What about drinking water right before bed? Any reason to try to hydrate at the end of the day if you hadn't hit your quota? Well, yeah, the downside is that you wake up in the night and piss. That's the problem, right, isn't it? So it's a fine line between, okay, getting in enough fluid is good, but then, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, right? I'm kind of like, oh shit, I've only drunk a liter of water today. That's bad. So I'll slam 2 liters of water at 7 o'clock at night just after dinner. And I get it down fine. It's not uncomfortable, but it's like, oh, fuck, now I got to piss. And I'm now got to piss again. And so it breaks your sleep up. So there's no downside to it other than it's likely going to break your sleep up because you're going to have to go to the toilet. Yeah, which is a downside. Because if it means that you are now sleeping poorly as a consequence of that, then that's not ideal for your entire life. So yeah, you probably just need to gauge it a little bit there, bro. Yep. But don't overthink it. All right, team. That was a good session. We've been here for a while. Hopefully you guys got some value out of that, and we will see you in the next one. Peace out, team. Love ya. See you soon.